Someone left a comment under my last video that genuinely made me laugh. They asked Arthur, "If you never leave the house anymore, how do you even know you're still alive?" And honestly, fair question. I told them every morning I check my pulse. The good news is, I don't have to pay a $20 cover charge or suffer through bad pop music just to do that. Now, before we go any further, let me make something very clear. I know there are people out there who truly come alive in crowded rooms, people who need noise, movement, packed schedules, constant plans. Otherwise, they feel restless. There are extroverts who recharge by surrounding themselves with 50 loud strangers every weekend. God bless them. I sincerely hope they enjoy it. And I wish them luck with the blood pressure, but I have a feeling that's not you. I think most of you listening right now know exactly what I'm talking about. You've stood in your kitchen on a Friday afternoon, staring at your car keys, feeling strangely guilty. Just because all you wanted to do was cancel your plans, stay home, and be left alone. You know that feeling. The phone rings, or maybe you bump into someone at the grocery store, and they ask, "So what are your big plans this week?" Then you look them straight in the eye and say, honestly, "Nothing, I'm not doing a thing," and instantly, you can see it on their face, the pity, the concern, that quiet little judgment. They assume you're lonely. They assume you've given up. They think something must be wrong with you. My name is Arthur. I'm 78 years old, a retired engineer. And today I want to explain why they are completely wrong, especially once you cross the age of 70. Staying home and doing absolutely nothing may be one of the smartest, healthiest, and most peaceful decisions you can make for yourself. Right now, it's 6:15 in the morning. I'm sitting in my old leather chair beside the window. I've got my black coffee exactly the same way I've made it for the last 50 years. The house is silent. I can hear the clock ticking on the wall. I can see the first rays of sunlight touching the oak tree in my backyard. To the outside world, this probably looks like a man doing nothing, but to me, this is sanctuary. The desire to stay home didn't happen overnight. It wasn't some dramatic moment where I woke up on my 75th birthday, locked the front door, and announced to the world that I was becoming a hermit. No, it happened quietly, slowly, almost so slowly I didn't even notice it at first. I just started realizing that the world outside my driveway didn't pull me in the way it used to. The noise felt louder, the pace of life felt faster, and honestly, unnecessarily exhausting. The urgency that used to push me out the door every morning slowly disappeared into the background. Back then, there was always somewhere to be: the engineering firm, my daughter Sarah's piano lessons, neighborhood meetings, appointments, responsibilities, deadlines. For decades, my life moved on a schedule, but somewhere along the way, something shifted. I found myself craving quiet more than stimulation. I stopped wanting to go everywhere. I started wanting to stay exactly where I was. And if you're listening right now, realizing you feel the same way, I need you to hear this carefully. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not becoming lazy. You are not losing your spark. And you are not disappearing from life. Your understanding of life is simply getting deeper. Let's look at it logically for a moment. Engineer to engineer, when you're 30 or 40 years old, your energy feels endless. You can work a 10-hour day, sit in traffic for an hour, go out to a loud dinner with 6 people, sleep 5 hours, and somehow wake up ready to repeat the whole thing again. You don't even think about energy back then because it feels unlimited. But by the time you reach your late 70s, the system changes. You're no longer connected to some giant city power grid. Now you're operating on a finite internal battery, and that battery doesn't recharge the way it once did. Energy becomes valuable, measurable. Every single thing outside your home starts costing something. Driving to the hardware store, that's 5%. Standing in line at the pharmacy under those buzzing fluorescent lights, another 10% gone. Going to a dinner party where someone spends 2 straight hours complaining about their golf swing, That might wipe out half your battery for the entire day. I slowly realized that every time I forced myself to go somewhere I didn't truly want to be, I came home exhausted, my knees hurt, my head felt heavy. Sometimes I needed an entire day of silence just to recover, and eventually I had to ask myself a very honest question. Why am I giving away my most precious resource to people, places, and situations that give absolutely nothing back to me? That's when I understood something important. Staying home is not hiding from life, it's intelligent energy management, it's protecting the little voltage you have left, so you can spend it on the things that actually feed your soul. For me, that means walking out into my garage, turning on the old overhead lights, and spending for quiet hours sanding a piece of solid walnut. Let me tell you about the project sitting in my garage right now. I'm building a hope chest for my daughter, Sarah, solid cedar, and if you've ever worked with cedar before, then you know. The smell alone changes the entire room. It fills the garage with this deep, earthy scent that immediately settles your mind. It slows you down in the best possible way. I still use hand planes whenever I can instead of loud power tools. There's something calming about the rhythm of it. Swish, swish, swish. Just the blade gliding across the wood, shaving away tiny paper-thin layers. And the strange thing is, woodworking at this age has taught me more about peace than most people ever learn from vacations or motivational books, because when you're shaping wood by hand, you have to be fully present. If my attention drifts for even a second, the blade cuts too deep and ruins the grain. If my hands are shaky because I exhausted myself at some noisy social event the night before, I feel it immediately. The focus disappears, the patience disappears, the precision disappears. I can't feel the tiny imperfections in the wood anymore. That's when I realize something important. Staying home protects the mental clarity required to create something beautiful. I would much rather trade the meaningless noise of a crowded room for the smooth finish of a handmade piece of furniture, and honestly, that's a trade I'll make every single time. There's also a kind of comfort in a familiar environment that the outside world simply cannot compete with anymore. At home, everything is predictable. The lighting is exactly how I like it. The temperature feels right. My chair supports my back perfectly. I know which floorboards creak before I step on them. A younger person hears that and thinks, who cares? But when you get older, those little predictable details create something incredibly valuable: peace. Your nervous system finally gets to relax. You're not dealing with traffic. You're not reacting to noise. You're not absorbing the chaos and tension of crowded places all day long. And if I'm being practical for a moment, as a retired engineer living on a fixed income, I also started noticing the economics of constantly leaving the house. The outside world is expensive. Everywhere you go, somebody wants $50 from you for lunch, for tickets, for parking, for gas. But when I stay home, my life costs almost exactly what I planned for it to cost. My black coffee costs maybe 12 cents a cup. The wood in my workshop was bought months ago. I'm not draining my money just to entertain myself or prove to society that I'm still active. And let me tell you, there's a deep kind of peace that comes from being fully content sitting in your own living room. My daughter Sarah struggled to understand this for a while. She's a wonderful woman, but she grew up in a generation that believes a packed calendar means a meaningful life. A few months ago, she came over on a Saturday afternoon. I was sitting on the back porch watching two blue jays hopping around the yard. She sat beside me, pulled out her phone, sighed, and said, "Dad, you've been home all week. There's a classic car show downtown today and a farmer's market too. Why don't you get out more? You need to stay active. If you sit here all the time, you're going to get depressed." I just smiled and I told her, "Sarah, I already spent 40 years being active. 40 years. I managed construction sites, handled supply chain disasters, dealt with corporate politics, raised a family, paid the bills, solved problems every single day. I proved my worth a long time ago. I don't need to walk around a crowded parking lot looking at old cars just to convince people I'm still alive. The truth is, society trains us to believe that doing more means being more. So whenever we rest, we feel guilty if we aren't producing something, consuming something, or socializing somewhere. We think we're wasting our lives, but here's what I've learned after decades of giving your energy away to your job, your spouse, your children, your responsibilities, your community. Eventually there comes a point where the debt has been paid. You carried the weight for years. You showed up when you were exhausted. You showed up when you were sick. You showed up when your heart was breaking. And still, you handled your responsibilities. You did the work. So at a certain point in life, something changes. Your responsibility is no longer to prove yourself to the world. Your responsibility becomes taking care of yourself, and that means rest is no longer something you have to earn. It becomes your right. The beautiful thing is, once you finally let go of the guilt and allow yourself to simply stay home, your body starts responding almost immediately. Your breathing gets deeper. The tightness in your shoulders, the tension you didn't even realize you were carrying, slowly begins to disappear. You sleep better, because when your environment becomes quiet, when your mind is no longer overstimulated, your body finally receives the message that it's safe. Safe enough to repair itself, safe enough to rest. I remember after my wife, Eleanor, passed away. For a long time, the house felt unbearably large. The silence felt heavy, painful, almost suffocating. At first, I tried to outrun the grief by keeping myself busy, but eventually, I got tired of running, and something unexpected happened. The silence changed. Instead of feeling like an enemy, it slowly became a companion, because when you stay home, when you remove the endless distractions of modern life, you finally give yourself room to process your own existence. Memories start returning. Sometimes I'll be standing in the kitchen making coffee, and suddenly I'll remember a trip Eleanor and I took to the mountains 30 years ago. I'll remember the exact smell of pine trees after the rain. I'll remember the sound of her laugh when our hiking trail got soaked halfway through the afternoon. Tiny details, tiny moments, but they come back so vividly. And I realized something. If I had been rushing out the door to some breakfast I didn't even want to attend, I would have missed that memory completely. I would have pushed it aside because I was too busy looking for my car keys. That's what staying home gives you. Space. Space to sit with your past. Space to forgive yourself for the things you got wrong. Space to appreciate the things you got right. That kind of emotional healing cannot happen in a noisy, crowded room. And honestly, most people are terrified of that silence. They stay constantly busy because they're afraid of being alone with their own thoughts. But there's a huge difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is an empty room you desperately wish someone else would walk into. Solitude is a room that already feels complete, simply because you're there. My friend George understands this better than most people. Every once in a while he comes over with his old dog Buster, and notice something. We never go out. We don't go to diners. We don't wander around crowded restaurants. George just pulls his old pickup truck into my driveway, walks into the workshop, and sits quietly on a wooden stool. While I work, I hand him a cup of coffee. Sometimes an entire hour passes and we barely say 10 words to each other. He watches me send wood. Buster sleeps on the cold concrete floor, and somehow that feels more meaningful than most conversations people have at loud dinner tables, because it doesn't require performance. There's no pressure. No pretending. No forced energy. George respects the peace of my home, and more importantly, he understands that at this stage of life, my energy is precious. Take a look at your calendar for a second. If every square is packed with doctor appointments, committee meetings, lunches with people you barely even enjoy, and endless errands, then somewhere along the way you stopped living for yourself. You became a full-time employee of your own schedule. I keep a calendar hanging in my kitchen. Most of it is blank, and let me tell you something. A blank Tuesday afternoon does not mean I have nothing to do. It means I have freedom. It means when I wake up that morning, I can decide exactly how I want to spend my day. Maybe I'll work in the garage. Maybe I'll sit on the porch with coffee. Maybe I'll read for 6 straight hours. Maybe I'll do absolutely nothing at all. That blank space isn't emptiness. It's luxury. It's peace. It's a life that finally belongs to me. And if people in your life make you feel guilty for staying home, I want you to understand something very clearly. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. A lot of people push others to stay busy because they themselves are uncomfortable with silence. They need constant motion, constant noise, constant distraction, and they want you to validate their lifestyle by participating in it, but you do not owe anybody an explanation. For protecting your peace, you don't have to invent excuses anymore. You don't need to fake a headache. You don't need to blame your back. You don't need to pretend you're waiting for a package. You can simply say, "No thanks, I'm staying home today," and leave it at that. There's a quiet dignity that comes with taking ownership of your environment. Home, I decide when my day starts. I decide when I eat. I decide whether I want to spend 6 uninterrupted hours reading about the American Revolution without speaking to another human being for the first time in my life. I am the architect of my own peace. So today, I want to give you permission. Cancel the plans you've secretly been dreading. Look at that crowded calendar hanging on your refrigerator and start clearing it out. Stop letting society convince you that a quiet life is somehow a meaningless life. Your home is not a waiting room. It's the destination. It's the fortress you spent your entire life building. You paid for those walls. You paid for that roof. You earned every inch of that peace, and you have every right to sit inside that home and enjoy the silence you worked so hard to create. So the next time somebody asks what you're doing this weekend, I want you to stand tall, look them in the eye and say, "I'm staying home, and I plan to enjoy every second of it." And if you understand what I've been talking about today, if your home has also become your sanctuary, I'd love to hear about it. Go down into the comments and tell me your favorite quiet place in the house. Maybe it's your chair by the window. Maybe it's your garden. Maybe it's your workshop. Maybe it's just the kitchen early in the morning before the world wakes up. Let's remind each other that there's beauty in staying still. And if this old engineer's perspective gave you even a little comfort today, make sure you subscribe and leave a like on the video, because there are a lot of people out there quietly exhausted, and they need permission to slow down too. We're building a quiet little rebellion here, and I'm glad you're part of it. Until next time, stay home and stay peaceful.